Eli Campbell here. One thing that makes Steamboat special is how many awe-inspiring people call our valley home. You could find yourself in line at the coffee shop next to an Olympian, or sitting on the gondola next to the founder of a world-renowned business. Our community produces and attracts the best of the best in their respective fields, but most are so humble about it you would never know. These extraordinary people are the common folk in the boat. Welcome to Common Folk in the Boat. Eli Campbell here with you. Dave Whitlinger joining me. How are you doing?
I'm great.
You're already looking like you have something happy to talk about.
I don't know what it is. We've talked about this before. As soon as you hit go, I just start cracking up.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's your face that makes me laugh or what.
Well, the sad news is this might be the last time that we do this, that we turn this on, and then you have to laugh at my face.
You're killing me.
Face for radio, but
I might need a blow up, not a blow up, a pin up of you.
Remember
a poster.
Remember what was the fan or the posters that you could stick to walls of athletes back in the day?
Yeah.
Fat heads.
Yeah. I need an Eli the Prize Guy fat head.
Yeah, there's a lot of people out there that get in line, man.
That could be your next business.
Yeah, it might be. I mean, I'm under confidentiality agreements, so you never know. You might have just tapped it on. But no, I mean, we've had a lot of fun over the course of 25 plus episodes, and I've greatly enjoyed Billow's support from the very beginning. You guys have been absolutely amazing. And so for one last time, I'm going to ask you, what are you high on?
Oh, man.
Other than just looking at my beautiful face.
Other than the products we sell. Let's see. I mean, to just kind of tip off, obviously we're still early summer. I would say probably the thing we're the most high on right now is just outdoor concerts again in Steamboat, right? Free shows, free or paid, but the idea is, Snowball as an example. We've got a great thing going with them this summer, and already they've had a couple shows. Last Wednesday was Scotty Stoughton, who we've had on the show with his Bonfire Dub group. I mean, talk about just good vibes all around, and we are just so high and thrilled to be part of that again and sort of be that community outlet for music. And I know music's passionate, the passion of yours, obviously, with everything you've got going on in general. It's just nice for Billow to once again be very big into the music scene, because that's where our customers live and breathe too. So
yeah, and I was out at Snowball yesterday, just bowling actually, but still you walk in and you see the stage and the lifted lounge right there. It looks great.
Well,
everything done.
So quick story on that. Literally, I was trying to brainstorm what we wanted to do for that space, and you start shopping around for custom signs. It's astronomical to get somebody to create a sign anymore. I mean, the price is ridiculous. And so I just sort of, in one of our weekly meetings, I was like, well, guys, I'm telling my boss I could just do that, and they're like, sold, you're in, do it. And all of a sudden I'm on the hook. So literally a lot of what you see at Snowball right now, I'm not gonna lie, I built in my garage with a jigsaw and spray paint.
That surprises me not at all. I remember when I was in my days of a cycling event production world, and I was helping out Steamboat Gravel, and you were helping me with that, and we were trying to find some wayfinding signs. Yeah. And you're like, hey, I could do that.
I'm a hobby welder. I can do that. Those, by the way, ended up to be like 200 pounds each.
Yeah,
I don't know if that
was
was
a little
really
different than what we expected, but it was still good craftsmanship.
Anyway, so no, I had a lot of fun, and so yeah, I would say that's what we're really the high on right now at Billow, is just being back in the community. It's summer, we're outdoors again, we're riding bikes, we're listening to music, we're doing all the things. So yeah.
And you mentioned Scotty Stoughton, which was the very first guest that we had here on Common Folk in the Boat. Kind of launched the whole idea of this podcast, so that kind of brings that full circle. We're going to come full circle again with our guest today. I'm really excited about this. I've said it before. The reason that I am a person that talks on a microphone has nothing to do with what I know. What I went to school for was never a dream of mine. It was because of someone I knew who knew Brian Harvey. And that's how I got the very first interview. And you were the sales manager under Brian Harvey when I got my first job 20 years ago. So it's really fun that we're going to be bringing Brian Harvey in here.
It's going to be great. It's like a great reunion here to kind of wind things down, if that's what we're calling it.
Yeah, and we've joked, and it might become true. Like, we have no idea how long this episode is going to be. I didn't prepare for it, because normally with a lot of these episodes, I go deep into finding out about the person. I learn more than they know. If you go back to that Scotty Stoughton interview, he even at one point says, like, how did you find that out about me? Like, I dove deep. This one, I was like, all we need to do is turn the microphone on and start talking, and we don't know how long this might end up being. So we'll see.
Should be good. I'm excited.
We'll be right back with Brian Harvey after this. Welcome back to Common Folk in the Boat. We've got Brian Harvey here. How are you doing?
I am awesome, Eli. Great to be here.
Yeah, it's great to see you. Now, I'm really excited because as we were talking kind of before we came on the microphones here, this might be the last, or certainly the last for a while, of Common Folk in the Boat. And this is kind of a full circle moment for me, because it was almost exactly 20 years ago that I was sitting in a room across a desk from both of you being interviewed for a job in media. So this is kind of perfect.
Has it been 20?
I was 24 years old.
2004?
To summer of 2005.
Okay.
And yeah, I've always said I got this job not because it was something I went to school to do. It wasn't like my dream. It was more of a who you know than what you know. I don't know if you remember, we were at a job fair originally, and I came over and I handed my resume to you, and you saw something about how I was a mogul skier, and you're like, oh, do you know Ann Battelle? And I was like, yeah, she was my coach. And you're like, come on in for an interview. And that was the start of my media world. So I guess
it's high friends and places, Eli.
Yeah, I guess I have you to thank for all of this.
Oh, lovely.
Well, and you started out as what, the prize monkey, and then you became the prize guy. Were you never the monkey?
Here's the thing is, we were at the Smokehouse doing Monday Night Football, and you said, Eli the prize fairy.
Oh boy.
And I said, I think we're going to have to change that. And to this day, there's someone in town that still comes up to me and says, hey, prize fairy.
Oh God.
So thanks a lot.
Sorry,
thanks
dude.
a lot. Yeah. From there, I had to change it to prize guy, but yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But there was a monkey, wasn't there?
We had a gorilla suit that
Or was that you, Dave?
It might have been, because I did as a publicity stunt, if you call it that, in Steamboat Springs. We as the radio, we entered me into the 400 meter, the 100 meter dash or something, the part of the 4th of July celebration.
Yep. Oh, God.
And I ran the thing in a gorilla suit wearing a KIDN shirt and hammed it up. I stopped about 12 times in the 400 yards just to like joke around, high five kids, whatever. And I hit it. Here's a real quick funny. At the end, they do a prize drawing for anyone who's registered. And of course, I wasn't registered for any other reason. This was like a publicity thing. Sure enough, I won like the grand prize. I won like a pair of like Solomon running shoes, and I'm not even a runner. I was like, okay, I guess I'll take those.
So did they call you by name, or did they call the KIDN monkey?
I forget what I registered as.
Yeah, so obviously we all come from this radio background, but like I said, it wasn't something I went to school for. It wasn't my dream. I'm curious for you, was this always what you wanted to be? Is this what you saw yourself doing for your life?
No, when I moved to Steamboat for one ski season, Mom, in 1988.
As everyone did.
I was a theater art major because I failed as an economics major, a sociology major, and a few other majors that I tried at school. But I was good at it. I'm creative. I could draw, I could paint. And I was a theater minor, but we didn't have a theater department per se, other than we put on productions, and it was part of the English department, but it wasn't huge. So I was into theater, and I was into art, and I wanted to be a professional actor. But I didn't feel I was mature enough. I felt like I'm cocky. I felt like I had the talent. And I moved to Steamboat, and I'm like, well, I'll move here for a couple of years, figure out how to ski better, because I could ski, but, like everybody, you really learn to ski when you move here. My best friend went to UVM, and he ripped, and we had a really competitive relationship. So I came here to really learn how to ski for a couple of ski seasons so I could ski better than him. And then once I got here, I KFMU was such an awesome station back then. And there was only 2-3 stations on the dial. And so I fell in love with KFMU. You know, I love music, and then that acting side of me, I was like, oh, I'm going to go be a DJ. And so I did overnights, midnight to 6, spinning records, and spun my first CD on the air.
Do you remember what the first one was?
The first CD, I don't. Yeah. I just remember being really scared because I was looking for the grooves. You know, and now it's all computers. There's not a single freaking CD player. Certainly no albums. But yeah, and then I figured out that radio worked, and when I really wanted to get into sales, and I started realizing, I was looking at graduate schools, and you're like, what am I gonna go back and try to be a studio art professor? Am I gonna go to the theater route? And there's no money in any of that. It was like 3:00 in the morning, and I played a Bruce Cockburn song, "Wondering Where the Lions Are," and it was probably second weekend of being on, and Bruce Cockburn spells his name Cockburn.
Right. Cockburn.
Yeah, that's Bruce Cockburn with "Wondering Where the Lions Are." 3:00 in the morning, the phone lines light up. And they're like, "Harvey, you freaking idiot, what are you doing? It's not Cockburn, it's Cockburn." So I put on another Bruce Cockburn song at the other end of the stop set, the commercials, and came out and said, well, if I spelled my name Cockburn, I'd pronounce it Cockburn too. Here's Bruce Cockburn with, whatever the song was. And I was teaching skiing at the time because, we had to have 6 jobs. And every day people were coming up, "Dude, I heard you said that. I heard you say that. And that was so funny, dude. You're so fun." And I'm like, oh my God, that was 3:00 in the morning. Imagine if you ran an ad at 3:00 in the afternoon, how many people would actually hear it? And that's how I went and begged Ward Homes. Did you work for? You didn't work for. You worked for me.
Yeah.
Did you? Never worked for.
I don't know if I ever did. I heard the name.
The great demotivator. But I begged to get into sales, and then I started with sales. He gave me a bunch of manila folders that were mostly dead accounts, and attrition. You slowly gain, and then I got into promotions, and then just worked my way up, and here we are. Yeah. And I hired you, and I hired you.
Yeah, you're kind of, I mean, Eli's being all, walk down memory lane, but I could say the same. I mean, you gave me my shot. And for me, it was that rescue from, I was in property management. Mm-hmm. And I just knew that wasn't where my heart was. So I was like, I need something different. And I think it was a similar story. I probably bumped into you at like a live remote. And I said, I know this is crazy. I have no experience, but, are you guys hiring? And you took a chance.
And if you guys are looking for jobs, I'll give you both recommendations. You're both awesome. I mean, Dave, you were driven. You would get so pissed at me because, I'm like scattered. I got 100 things going on. You'd be like, "Look at this proposal. Is this all right?" I'm like, "It's great. Go ahead. Go sell."
Just get out of my office.
Just get out of my office. Because, we're doing more with less.
Yeah, and I mean, I want to go back to those early days, because I have, and you said it, radio is a powerful media, and I have memories of KFMU before I worked there. I mean,
right.
When I first think about my introduction to KFMU, I was managing Cookie Lockhart's tubing operation. And I remember we were sitting out there early season, blowing up tubes in her driveway and listening to the radio. And I can still remember listening and hearing like Ben Harper when I was, 17 years old, and like being tied into the emotions of that summer and that song. And, when I hear that song still, it like takes me back. And that's kind of what radio does.
It's the power of music, right?
Yeah, it's incredible. Now, I actually emailed to you about a year ago, I think. I found a file that was your voice interviewing Dave Matthews, like 30 years ago.
96, probably.
93,
93, 5, 4.
Yeah.
Right when he was breaking in, he was just signed by RCA, I think it was. And the record industry was so awesome back then. And that's when KFMU was in its prime. And we had a big studio here, which we don't. We ran everything here. It was basically live and local. We were starting to voice track when you came on. But the record companies, it was pre-internet. And so the record companies would basically front a band, Spin Doctors, Blues Traveler, all these bands that came through town, $400,000. They print X number of CDs, give them a bus, tell them to go build an audience. And where do you go? You go to tourist towns. So they do the Colorado trip in the winter or summer, and they go through Breckenridge and Steamboat and Aspen. And so we got bands on the way up or the way down. And I mean, it's hard to remember all the bands that I got to interview because I just happened to be at the right place at the right time. But from Bo Diddley to James Brown to Collective Soul to, String Cheese and Widespread Panic, and of course Dave Matthews, and and I don't have you sent me the interview in like parts and pieces. I'm like, oh my, I don't have any of them. It's so bad because they weren't digital, Yeah,
and it's just one that I happened to come across. And what's interesting to me, I mean, Dave Matthews is such a known name now, and I can listen to that interview and know that you're kind of like piecing it together. Like, I don't know who this guy is. I don't know what he's going to become.
You get a one sheet from the label, and that's all you get. Bio.
We had been playing the CD, and that was the cool thing about KFMU back then. We were a reporting station to the record companies. So we would get sent, a box of 12 CDs for promotions. And if they were coming through, if a band was big enough and they're playing Red Rocks, we'd do a meet and greet, or Fiddler's Green. And we work a deal with Alpine Taxi and B&K Distributing. So we'd have the Budweiser party bus, and we'd have fill up the bus. People would register to win. We'd do point of entries at Subway and Central Park Liquor and wherever else, that we would sell them to. And then we'd do these party buses or meet and greets and what have you. It just is such a different, with the internet and the voice and all these, record companies really barely exist. They're just trying to create one-hit wonders. So I got distracted there.
No, it people always ask me, because I've had the opportunity to interview some great musicians, and they say, oh, who's your favorite? Who is the hardest? And those sorts of things. And I remember when we used to, at KFMU, they would call us and say, hey, we're coming through. We want to get into the radio station. Now it's so much harder.
Right.
They don't have the incentive to come through. But those were the kind of the heydays of radio. And like you said, you named off a lot. But do you have a favorite memory of any of the interviews that you did?
James Brown was really cool because by hook or by crook, the James Brown Soul Center of the Universe Bridge got named, and it was super controversial. They named it. The city council was sort of laughing at it. Somebody had submitted it. Craig Poff, who used to manage Terry Sports, had submitted it for a park. So the James Brown Soul Center of the Universe Park. And it didn't, they didn't name the park, but they had the name. And then I think Winnie Della Quadre, who just retired from the city, she resubmitted that for the bridge. And city council was like, yeah, let's name it that. And then, oh my God, it was tense because some people liked the name, some people didn't. James Brown has a bit of a sordid history, and so at any rate, we ended up doing a petition with the pilot, and we got so many signatures and so many people involved. We created, back before digital editors, a really cool ad, and then he came in and spent an hour with me. And I was really nervous because there was a way to interview him. Like, I got sent a booklet of, you only call him Mr. Brown, and you only, you can't refer to this, and you have to do that. I read this whole book. I was more prepared on James Brown. And then we had the AM Soul station from Denver was doing a live feed from it. Like, they had plugged in and they were sending it through phone lines back to Denver. We had 3 TV stations with cameras in the KFMU studio, and there's freaking James Brown, and I'm like sweating, and if you listen, I'm like talking like you could just like breathe, Harvey. I was so freaking nervous, but it was awesome, and he was so nice. And I kept calling him Mr. Brown. He goes, I'm James, man. I can feel the love. and it was like someone had spray painted the bridge with a racial epitaph, Coons Crossing or something really, really stupid. And it was a little embarrassing the way some people handled it. And it kind of woke your eyes up to, oh, Steamboat, there's racism everywhere.
The bubble that we thought we were all in.
Absolutely. Everybody loves everybody. And now, of course, it's all coming back to light with our current, what's going on in our country right now, which we don't need to get into. But he handled it so well. He goes, no, man, that's one person. I feel the love. And he said, I'm coming back. And he did. He opened for String Cheese.
I actually talked to Kyle Hollingsworth back in February. And he had such a great story about that. He said, here we are, a bunch of white kids with a funny name. And I can't say that James Brown opened for us because no one James Brown doesn't open. Right. I guess
shared the bill, but he opened for them.
Yeah.
And he was incredible. And it was in fact where Wild Horse Meadows is. So right, above on the way to the ski area, I think there's some condos being built there right now. But that was all a big open field, and Waldman put up and charged money for it. It was not a free show.
The Independence Incidents. Yeah.
Yes. 1 year and then 1 year John Popper came, I think.
John Popper, I remember Ben Harper came too, and he, I think he was playing in Germany, and he flew into Denver. The story I'd heard, he'd flown into Denver, rented a red Mustang, sped up here, played his set, didn't even play an encore because he had to get back to Germany, so he got back in his red Mustang and right back down to Denver to fly out.
And he would not interview because he was so shy. The nicest guy, hung out, is I don't really quiet and was and then when he gets on the slide guitar, look out.
Yeah.
He played Levels. Were you around for that?
I wasn't. So when I started KFMU, I remember it was the Fray was just starting their career off, and they just were playing Levels, and it was like the day I was starting, everyone from KFMU was going to that show, but there were no extra tickets for me to go.
Sorry, intern.
I was like, come on, I'm the new promotions guy. I need to promote things.
Yeah, right.
Actually, my first day, funny story about my first day, there was a girl I had been dating through that summer, and she was leaving that day. And so we'd stayed up all night, and I came into work, and you handed me, I think it was you handed me the employee handbook and said, here, read this.
We'll be testing you on it later.
Yeah. And I'm reading it, and I am falling asleep at my desk. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to lose my job very first day. I remember there were things in there that I was like, is this true? Is this really the way it is? And I was like, I think there was even a line in there, you can't work here if you're under 25. And I'm like, I'm 24. They hired me.
I think I probably did that to you because I was feeling the same way. I'm like, I don't want to train this kid today. I'm a little tired. Yeah. Here, kid, go read this. Yeah. Report back. See ya.
But I mean, those were fun days. I remember, working for you guys. I remember we had the Harveyisms back in our sales meetings. It's not it's not rocket surgery. There was one about a snowball rolling downhill.
I still use them all.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I still use them all. I still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I have to rib you a little bit about when you left. For some reason, I was the one that ended up going into your office.
That was a good office.
Which was a nice office. But you left, and I remember going through the files, and there was 10-year-old oil receipts, oil change receipts. You were a hoarder of so much, and it was my job to clean it out. So
my wife has corrected me of yes, I saved everything.
Yeah.
And my office back then was a freaking disaster. I now realize that my son is he's gifted and talented, which I don't have. But he also has sort of slow processing and ADHD. And once I started reading of, sort of what that entails and what that causes, I'm like, that's me starting 5 different projects at once I'm like, that's me. That's why I'm good at what I do, And so, back then so now I working at Steamboat Radio, Don and Monica, they own the stations. They're right upstairs. So I have to keep a little tighter ship. But now everything's in the computer. So I just have files and files and files in the computer, which is in the cloud backed up. So back then it was I was a piler, so I apologize, man. I feel, because Dave, you are so wired differently than me. I used to drive you crazy, like drive you nuts.
I remember we'd meet in your office, and I would start to get about 15 minutes in. It would like agitate me to where I just like. I needed to clean something or organize, or we just had to end the meeting because it just bugged me.
No, I think we started meeting in your office after that. Yeah, I could tell. It was like, I'm like, oh, dude, I just, because we are different, but that's the beauty, right? Like,
absolutely.
You need to surround yourself with people who do other things better than you, and just point everyone in the right direction of do what you like, and if you do it well, everything will work out.
Man.
And like you mentioned, you moved on from KFMU. You're over at Steamboat Radio now, which, it's what you guys do over there. I've always have nothing but praise for the work that you guys do. But it's different from the music that we were playing at KFMU and what you kind of were most attracted to when you got into radio here. What was that transition like, going from kind of what we in the industry call adult album alternative, AAA, over to country and everything else?
So I went first to just the KBCR station. So, and I
when it
went
was in the gas station.
When it was we were full service radio. Ding ding. It was country, and then we had the ESPN affiliate, ESPN Radio, when ESPN Radio was great.
Yeah.
I mean, that was when they had a lot of great, Mike and Dan Patrick was on then. Stephen A. Smith had a really good radio show.
Colin Cowherd was on.
Colin Cowherd was on that. It was great, and that was the start of Harvey's Huddle to 2006, 2007. And I was like, I'm from Boston, not from Austin. I don't like country music, I don't think. And I went over to KBCR, and I thought everyone listened to KFMU because that was in my wheelhouse. That was the music I loved, this AAA format, and digging deep and not playing all the hits, but playing the classic rock, but playing the new music. And when I went to KBCR and was playing, it was country, it was modern country, but with old stuff thrown in. It was sort of like a AAA country format where we also dug deep and had 2,000-3,000 songs in the library. And it was an awakening where, I remember walking into Freshies and sitting down and someone went, because I was doing the news and helping Tom Palmer out, God rest his soul, with mornings. And then I was selling, and I was like the sales manager or general manager. I don't even know what my title was, but I went into Freshies, I remember, and then, back in the day, all the beautiful girls worked at Freshies. And this was before I got married. And I just remember like 3 waitresses going, oh, I take a shower with you every morning now that you're on KBCR. And I'm like, you didn't listen to KFMU? And then like all of a sudden I started to realize how many people were listening to modern country, whatever. I mean, after all, we're in freaking Steamboat. Like it is. And that's when I started realizing it's like, hey, people like all sorts of different stuff. And so going from there, what Tom Dobrez, we don't need to get into the minutia of ownership changes of KFMU and the KFMU group of stations, but we'll just say it went in the wrong direction in my mind. And I needed to move on to try to better myself, and we all know how that works. And so I went to KBCR. Tom Dobrez owned them at the time, and it wasn't for much more money, but he's like, you need to do a sports talk show. We'll Brian Harvey on the radio. And then I came up with the Harvey's Huddle because I didn't like the idea of the Brian Harvey show because I don't like to prepare. And I'm really not very organized. And doing a huddle format, I had Tony and I had Mike Deemer. And all I said, it's like we're just 3 fraternity brothers hanging around the keg, shooting shit. Can I say that?
Talking sports.
Yeah, just talking sports, talking what's going on in town. And we had a great chemistry, and it just took off. And then when several years later, and Tom Dobrez owed me a $500 bonus for like 3 or 4 years, and I just was tired of working, for the man. And then Don had started this light rock station, Easy. And I remember getting into my wife's car and turning her car on, and she's listening to Easy 94.1. I'm like, what are you doing? This is one of our stations, you know.
Traitor.
Yes. And again, people like different things. She's a, 40-year-old woman. She likes light rock, so and that was, and I'm like, where is this station coming from? And then all of a sudden I got an email from Don that said, I want to talk, I want to meet with you. And so it was a startup station, started up, and in between then I got a phone call from ESPN saying, yeah, we're taking away, there's another group in town that's gonna do the ESPN format. You're gone in 60 days. And I'm like, freaking out, because that had become my passion, sports. Yeah. And I was always doing high school sports and KBCR had the high school football. And so the high school sports was always sort of part of it. And then that kind of followed me around, and Don's like, no, I called you, Eli, and said, dude, did you take the ESPN format? I'm like, what are you doing? Like, I was so PO'd.
I remember that call. I was like, whoa, I don't even know what you're talking about.
And I'm like, huh? Really? Okay, sorry about that, Eli. Yeah. And then Don was like, no, I've got it. And we're starting a stick, and we're going to do light rock, and we're going to do ESPN. He goes, this town needed a women-only station. A station that reaches females. It's not, jam bands. And he was right, because it took off. Women control, they say 85% of the household spending. We're all married.
We're all married, yeah.
It was John Sentner who said, no, it's like 150% of the household spending. He goes, because I found a couple of credit cards I didn't know about. And so yeah, women buy, they do that, and so it was brilliant of Don. And then he sort of was like, this whole, like this real jammy radios, he was like, and he just started buying stations and then kind of changing the formats. And he's way more into the familiar sound. He owns the stations, and it's all worked, so I'm not one to argue. And I have softened my militant stance on what good radio is. And even though some of these formats I personally don't like, there's a lot of people that do. And when you can say, hey, we reach 30 plus women, soccer moms, and we'll also get some guys and whatever. And then he turned KRMR FM into like a classic hits format. Yeah. They're playing 80s music. Well, that reaches like a 40 plus sort of female demographic, and then we have The River, and that station, he's grown that. I love that station now. He's playing everything from Pearl Jam to Led Zeppelin and all the classic rock, Beatles, everything in between, and he digs very deep. That's got like 4,000 or 5,000 songs.
Well, and when I started at the radio station, it was KBCR, it was KRAI, KFMU, and then we had KIDN, we had a couple of these other things, but those were the three main players. And now we're in this place where I think there's 10 frequencies that are in town at least, and Steamboat Radio controls most of them, and the variety is what helps you, because you can reach so many different people. There's not just one flavor for this town anymore.
No, it's crazy. And now I'm doing hosting Swap Shop from 9 to 10 every morning on 55 Country, which was one of the KREI stations, and that's classic country. And that has a reach like no other. It goes almost to Vernal, up to Bags, down to Rifle, to Grand Junction. I listened to the Broncos watching Griffin play a lacrosse game many moons ago. It's incredible. And Swap Shop, which is like buying and selling everything from guns to hay to, and
it's like people the Facebook marketplace of AM radio. I
imagine that's still a thing. Again, the digital era. Like
So I got 20 calls today.
Dang.
20 calls. We have roll through the write-ins. I have 28 write-ins that I keep on a Google Doc. And I get 4 to 7 write-ins every day. It's huge. And it sells stuff. I was like, we got to get rid of this, and then Vladen was hosting it. And then COVID hit, and we sort of downsized like everybody else. And Vladen wanted to do his thing, and he went on and became a firefighter, and has done several other things since then. And I was like, we've got to get rid of this show. And then I started hosting it. And I'm like, we're not ever getting rid of this show. This is the original social media. And I could put
QVC actually.
Yeah, it's pre QVC. It's like we used to do the want ads in Boston. They had like this big booklet that would come out like once every week, and you'd submit it, and you pay to it. It's like classified.
The penny savers.
Yes, exactly. and oh my God, I was like, we're not getting rid of it, and it's fully sponsored. It localizes it. I certainly have a lot of fun with it, and I could break down in Meeker, knock on anybody's door, and they would go, "Oh, Brian Harvey, come on in."
Yeah. And going back to the sports, you actually were it was Colorado Sportscaster Broadcaster of the Year. Is that what you were honored with?
Colorado Athletic Directors Association, Athletic Director Association's Media Person of the Year.
Yeah.
And thanks to Luke DeWolf, who was the Athletic Director of the Year, well deserved. But yeah, when we went to work when I went to Steamboat Radio, Don Talapic, who owns the stations, was like instrumental of like, no, we're making this, we're doing more sports. Because he saw that it's a local conduit, and that's why people stay on the dial, is if we have local weather, local news, local sports, you can't get that on, you can kind of get it online, but when we're throwing it to you, and the closest game is in Craig at 33 miles away, but most games are an hour and a half to 3 away, parents can't make it, you know.
Well, I've shot you text messages and emails and no bones about it. Like, we rely on you when our kids are playing hockey or whatever down in Colorado Springs. I don't want to drive 4 hours, but I do want to see the game. And even you guys are doing Facebook feeds a lot of time too, or you're tapping into it. So I am 100% behind you in the sense that it is effective, because I know it saves me gas and time and aggravation, and I don't know what I would do without you, quite honestly.
And it is. I mean, this year winning a state championship was awesome, but I had actually already had been told that I had won that before we had won the state championship. And Luke, fortunately, we had gone through a time where we were rotating athletic directors. Luke's been doing it for 15 plus years. So basically he's like, we're at whatever radio station you're at, that's who's doing high school sports. Yeah. And then Don, it's an annual package. It's sold out every year. It's very rare that we get. I use the drug dealer reference a lot, your Brian Harvey-isms. But once we get you started on it, once we get you hooked, usually those people don't come off because of the effect.
You don't use the first hits free.
No, that we don't do.
Okay. Darn.
But once we get it going,
I do.
Yeah,
you've seen me around town.
I have seen you
sampling.
Dark Dave.
Get a lot of pats on the back. I'm like, hey, this one's free, but the next one's not.
It's my high friends and places, right?
Yeah. But speaking of the sports and the community connection, I mean, that's what that's what drew me to radio. Yes. That's what I've always loved about it, is this was my connection point to my local community, especially when I was working in it. And the sports were a great example of that, because when you were at KFMU, we had the sports. And I remember doing soccer games with you. I remember doing basketball, and it was so much fun. And you get so much feedback from it.
Parents
from
love
the
you.
Parents, yeah.
So it was pretty funny when the Steamboat Sailors hockey team, they started in 2003. And at KFMU, KBCR had the rights to football and basketball. So that's where I was like, we'll do soccer. And because I knew that once I started doing it, and life is about relationships, and if I could build my relationships with whoever the athletic director was, I'm taking the football, and ultimately I ended up going to KBCR and then moving it around. But if we do a good job, what we with the high school sports, with the hockey, back in 2003. KBCR didn't want to do it, and so I begged the athletic director at the time to do it, and he goes, no, I don't want to hurt the gate. He goes, I think radio is gonna, if we're broadcasting the game, people aren't gonna go to it. I'm like, dude, you're high, because ultimately, if we broadcast it and we're talking about it on the radio and people are listening to the games, we're creating fans, we're selling the sport, and he let us do it, and
how many times would you see, I don't know if you still do, but back then, 20 years ago when I was doing it, you would see people listening to their radio, their portable radio at the game.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know? Oh, yeah, the Steamboat Secret Service. Now, not as much anymore, but I have a crowd of moms that usually, because we do it in the stands for the hockey game, that sit right in front of me and listen to it. I've had a few hockey moms who said, I've been following my kid for 10 years and had no clue what was going on until I started listening to you. So, which was good, but that's doing those hockey games started it, and now, and you know, Dave, and congratulations to Gab, winning the state championship and scoring the big goal and being a huge contributor as a sophomore. And that Gavin is his son, and he's a stud on the ice rink, and a great kid. I wanted to be the high school hockey coach. So I was, when they brought high school hockey, and I'm like, I want to be the coach. And it was Kent Foster who used to do the games with me, and we were great friends and played men's league team, adult league teams together. And he's like, Harvey, you do not want to be the high school hockey coach. I'm like, what do you mean? Why? He goes, because 50% of the parents will hate you just because. He goes, be the broadcaster. Broadcast the game, and everybody will love you because you don't like it when people don't like you. Yeah. And I'm like, good point. I'm a little sensitive. So sure enough, it was the best advice. And then that was the tipping point, because, you know, hockey's a hard game to do. And I think we got so much success and we were filling the ice rink that's when we started, you know, that's when we got all the sports.
Grabbing some of the others. Yeah. Now, I want to take you back. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I think you've told me this before, that young Brian Harvey used to watch the Bruins probably with like the sound off because your mom wouldn't let you, or maybe it was just for fun, and you used to talk to yourself. Essentially, you would broadcast just for fun. Is that correct?
I was destined for radio.
So,
without knowing it.
That's not a telltale sign that you were destined to be a hockey commentator. I don't know what is.
What I was a huge Bruins fan. All right. So when I'm old. So, you know, 70s, Bobby Orr. And yes, Wayne Gretzky's the great one, but Bobby Orr changed the game. Go watch the YouTube videos. He is a man among boys. So I was a huge Bobby Orr and the Big Bad Bruins, but the games were always on late. So I would sneak downstairs, and it was on channel 38, you know, 6 channels, UHF channel.
Oh, yeah.
And I'd turn the volume down, and I would call the game in my head. I would do the play-by-play. But Bob Wilson was the voice of the Boston Bruins. He's one of my, he's the man. He was the man. God rest his soul. But yes, and I would listen also. I would go to bed at 7:30, 8 o'clock, and I had a transistor radio, and I'd listen to Boston sports radio, and I'd put it under my pillow. So, you know, if my mom walked in, she'd just think I was sleeping. But I'm listening to the radio, and I'm yelling at this, you know, it's original sports radio, and now I host Harvey's Huddle. There you go. And so all the hot takes back then, and Boston was sort of one of the early markets, Boston, New York, of sports talk radio back in the 60s and 70s. And so, yeah, and I didn't, you know, that whole, and so that's when Tom Dobrez said, why don't you do a sports show? And I'm like, can I do that?
Yeah, am I allowed? This is
am I
dream
allowed to
come
do
true.
that?
Yeah.
And it took off. And so we're almost 20 years in. So that's pretty crazy.
Well, and whereas Gavin is in the hockey realm, your son goes a little bit more after my first love, which is mogul skiing. And you've transitioned being able to have the gift of gab on the radio to now announcing the mogul competitions across the Rocky Mountain region.
If there's a mic, I'll probably be talking on it.
So that's a lot of downtime you got to fill. I imagine, right, between runs.
No, it's pretty quick. So each run takes anywhere from 22 seconds to 30 some odd seconds.
But then isn't there time between?
And then they literally line them up and go.
Okay. All right.
So you're getting radioed down. So I don't do those on the radio, but Rocky Mountain Freestyle has figured out I know how to use a microphone. It was pretty funny. I'd done some of his Devo comps, which is the young age, and then RQS. I'd done a few comps here and there, and it was the first, what they call the comp series, the competitive series, which is high school age kids and a little beyond. which is where Griff's skiing now. It was like 3 years ago. He started out, and you got to get your volunteer hours because winter sports club's expensive. Now Griff and Gavin played hockey together, and they won a state championship as Pee-wees. So Griffin was playing hockey and mogul skiing, two sports in the same season. And by the time he got to 8th grade, I was like, okay, dude, you got to choose. And he loves mogul skiing. Yeah. He loves, and hockey. He was small back then. When he was at Bantam, he was 4'11", weighed 100 pounds, and he's playing with like Sawyer Vietnam, who at the time was probably shaving his back. Sorry, Sawyer, he's such a great player. But he was a freshman, and so we had it was like 7th, 8th, and 9th graders the way the birth dates work. And it was first year hitting, he got lit up and it was stressed him out. He was done. So yeah, he full-time mogul skiing, and then Rocky Mountain Freestyle. It was the first event was in Steamboat, and I called Kevin Sankey and I volunteered to be the announcer, and he's like, "Oh, cool, you got it covered. This is great." And so I walked to that JJ Jakimowicz, and he's the head. Who we're now fast friends, but he's one of the Vail parents, and he runs Rocky Mountain Freestyle. And he's walking around. He's got the microphone in his pocket, and I walk up to him and I'm like, "Sir, I'm Brian Harvey. I'm the parent announcer. I volunteered to announce today." And he kind of looks at me side-eyed, and he has the mic. Goes, "Now, have you ever used one of these before?" Once or twice. I said, "But I'm coachable. If I'm saying something wrong or not doing it correctly, because I'm kind of learning the sport. Yeah. I mean, I used to do the shoot bump off, but never was a competitive mogul skier per se, and loved freestyle. Friends with Ann Patel, your former coach." So I had been around mogul skiing, but I didn't know that much about it. And so needless to say, 20 minutes in, he comes back to the announcer's table and goes, "Can you do all of our events?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And so now they don't pay me, but they get my lodging, which is huge, as you know. Yeah. Like you've got comps in Aspen and Telluride.
And over President's Week. Yeah. Like, by the way, we're also going to the most expensive resort on the planet during the most expensive time.
You think hockey's expensive?
Oh gosh,
my God!
No, I imagine.
Mogul skiing is ridiculous. So that really saved me, financially, and because we don't make a ton of money in radio, but we certainly have a lot of fun, and that's been awesome. So I've been doing that, and been now able to do junior nationals, and I'm sure as Griffin progress, we'll get nationals in there. And my goal is to do some FIS events and some NORAMs and some World Cup events at some point.
Yeah, maybe off into the Olympics.
Maybe I don't know. Like it's a small community, and you don't realize that, and then people know who you are. I now have friends across the region, which is really cool, and it's like hockey. It's a small, but even smaller. Because all the kids every weekend are competing against each other. And unlike hockey, they're not beating each other up. And they don't hate number 6 or number 7. They're like, they get their 2 runs. And if it's up to you. Nobody's defending you.
You're competing against the other competitors, but really you're competing against yourself and trying to do better than what you did
brutal.
The last time. And it was funny to me when you texted me over the winter saying, "Hey, there's someone here, the judge here that knows you," and it was one of my best friends from when I was skiing. So there's a lot of people stay in that world, and
she's a great judge, and it is very like Helena Carpenter. There's a lot of people know you, Eli. I throw your name out all the time. The prize guy.
Thanks. The prize guy. Yeah. It's funny how when I go around town here, still people call me EPG or ETPG or. I only get the prize fairy once still, but it's again going back to where we started. That shows the power of radio. One time, and still someone will remember that. And
I would never call you the prize fairy anymore.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. But I want to kind of wrap up by talking about the state of radio where it is, because when we were doing it together out of the same office, it was that you had the radio station, you had the newspaper, and the yellow pages back then.
Yes.
The yellow pages has gone away completely.
Yep.
The newspaper, I tell people that I think Shannon does a better job and a more accurate job with the news than the newspaper does.
I would not argue.
And so radio has kind of been in this weird place where since I started, it's dying. Everyone tells you it's dead.
Been saying that for
dying.
50 years.
Yeah.
It's not.
It's interesting though. I mean, it's certainly changed.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have a radio in my house anymore. I don't. But it's in my car. It's around. You've got phones. You know, there are different ways.
We do stream.
So I'd like to know your thoughts on the future of community radio, especially in a small town like this.
So the challenges are, and when, like, I don't know how, like Ron Tarson, or when radio stations were standalone, and you had to have people there 24/7 to run it, and legally you had to have someone in the studio according to the FCC. Anybody can start and own a newspaper, you know, back in the day, or now. Not that anyone picks them up and reads them anymore. Obviously, the pilot's done a really good job of being online and having a great online presence. They do their specialty magazines and their best of the boat and all that stuff, and they're still relevant. But again, radio is so easy because it's in the car. And so when you get in the car, you turn it on, it turns on with you. And people have their 3 or 4 stations. And the great thing about Steamboat and the Yampa Valley, Routt and Moffat County, is we go everywhere. You don't need to pick it up as far as, you know, pick up a physical or even go find it online. And as long as we're doing local things like weather, road reports, news, Shannon, doing live remotes from places, it works. I mean, you know, Kate, who is the former United Way executive director, Kate Nowak, she's like, as soon as you start talking, people start coming for our what used to be 10K days that are now 75K days.
Dang,
because, you know, it's just, it has changed, but we're still getting 87 and 90% of you know, 12 plus people listening to the radio. And as long as there's a format out there, the dial's sticky, and we're lucky because there's not that many formats. So, you know, there's a few variations of rock stations, but they're all a little bit different. We've got a modern country station, a classic country station. We've got a sports station. Politics does not work in a small town. And we tried to hear both sides talk.
Yeah.
That's why we went with a Spanish-speaking station. We've got a huge Spanish population here, Latin population here. And so, and that station has gone through the roof. If you go to work sites, you can hear the Mexican pop music playing. And
the polka.
Yes.
It's a very polka-ish. I've heard plenty of it on job sites.
Yeah, and the businesses that are advertising, very loyal listeners.
If I can just interject, the other, you know, obviously the car and the radio, that's the easy one. I remember back in the day, and even now, I thought about you the other day because of this. Real quick, I was working on a car, which is not my forte. I was with another gentleman who was showing me how to fix up a car now that Gavin will be driving. And I go over to his house on a Saturday morning. We're going to work on the brakes. He's going to show me how to replace brake pads. And we go to his garage, and he's like, wait, before we start, and he presses play on, or turns on his garage radio.
Yep.
It's on the river.
Yep.
And we listened to that for a good 5 hours straight.
Yeah.
And that was the other thing I always, back when I was selling and just in general, we would always say, yeah, people listen to it all day in their garages, you know, on weekends and stuff. And that's usually, if I'm listening to a terrestrial radio, that's also my listening habit. But it was one of those, like, it took me back, full circle, back to this group here, and you specifically, Brian, of like, oh yeah, people still get up on Saturdays, work on their cars, and what do they have in their garage all day? And, you know, come fall, it's going to be the Broncos game on, you know, whatever. So yeah, I'm
if that
with
Broncos game drops off, my phone lights up.
Yeah,
lights up.
I'll bet.
So no, it's still, and now you can stream it on the phone. So I listen to KTYV, the sports station, which is my P1 station. I, having been a country DJ and a rock DJ and whatever, I kind of skewed a little bit away from the music, although when I need it, I definitely go to the river. I'm not sure what's going on with KFMU these days, but it makes me cry. Getting rid of the studio and all that, just
it's hard when
the
you
memories
try to tune into it and it's not even on the air.
Yeah. One of you guys must have the propeller somewhere. You probably do. The wooden propeller from the wind power days.
It's in Avon. It ended up in Avon. Actually, the guy who owns the building now, though, he called me a little bit ago.
Or did he sell it?
No.
What did he find in the basement?
The guys, it's the Partovis. They own
Yes.
the building, and they called me like, "Do you want the sign, the KFMU sign, off the side of the building?" And I was like,
No.
As much as I love the memories and everything, I don't know what I would do with that. Like, there's nothing. I love the idea of it, but I have a couple things at home that are like, I have one of the old aluminum wind and solar powered signs,
Yep.
and a stained glass thing, and my own memories.
Lady of the Wind.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, oh God, yeah. I mean, it's propane powered radio. And because you guys know. Like,
I'll bet you don't miss taking the snowmobile up to the top Emerald every snowstorm, and
there was a point in '98
that.
when KIDN, when I was managing KIDN, and they deregulated radio, and KIDN and KFMU came together within a week. We were selling against each other, and then all of a sudden, they merged the offices. We had to move the station. There was like a 5-week period where I made a trip up to the top of Stagecoach to turn us back on in a snowmobile, and I am not a snowmobiler. I had never driven one until then, and I'm a skier. What happens when you stand on your left ski? Where do you go, Eli?
Well,
which direction?
My left knee doesn't work anymore. But yeah, when you stand on your left ski, you're gonna go to your right.
Right, but when you do that on a snowmobile, it doesn't work that way. You got to lean into the turn, and I'm driving it into tree wells, and it was underpowered, and oh my God, I freaking. But yeah, those were the days, and they probably have the same power system up there that they did. So it's propane. It used to be wind and solar, but 97 the blowdown. So the big prop, which we're talking about, it's a New Jersey street lamp, a highway street lamp pole. So it's like 150 feet tall, and it's got those little spikes. I'd never even want to go up it. And you've got some solar panels on the side of it, and then there's a bank of solar panels, and you would roll the dice of when you could get the propane truck up there, because if you waited too late, it snowed and you couldn't get up there with it, and then you were screwed for the winter, which is probably what happened currently. But you literally roll the dice and then hope you can get back up there in March, and then keep the solar panels.
Yeah, and I mean, when I worked there at one point, mice ate through the propane line in the middle of the winter, and so it's just kind of, you just have to wait till the sun would come up, basically. So, which in the winter could take days. But
yes.
Well, Brian, I know you've got to get going. We joked before this that once we turn the mics on, I didn't really prepare for this interview. I just knew that once we turn the mics on, we would be talking, and here we are. Yeah. So, again, this was a full circle moment for me. I thank you for putting me into a job that I was not qualified for 20 years ago that got me to this position. And, Dave, for being there as you were the sales manager. I learned organization from you. I learned creativity. You got it all. I got the best of both of you, though. Yeah. So that was great.
I learned what not to do from you, Harvey. I get it. Eli, congratulations, and good luck in your next endeavor. I'm honored to do this with you and maybe close out this chapter. But hopefully this continues on, because local information, however people gather it, is so important, and that's what's important to our small town. And when we get into our little niches and kids and parents and whatever it is that we're doing, sometimes, and as this town grows, it's hard to realize it, and it's hard to keep that small town feel in something like this. That you've done a great job with it. Well, so
thank you very much, and thank you for being here, Brian Harvey, one of the common folk of the boat.
Woohoo!